Mr. Speaker, members of this House. But there's an unfair implication in this debate because there's a particular country, ladies and gentlemen, who were EU, which the currency was EU already, ladies and gentlemen, and members of this House. If there are particular states, ladies and gentlemen, that the currency was dollar or the currency was drachma, Mr. Speaker, members of this House. And these states are the ones that are highly affected by the economic depression right now because they're not able, Mr. Speaker, to recover, ladies and gentlemen, and members of this House. What is the policy under opening government? Firstly, Mr. Speaker, the abolition, ladies and gentlemen, of this particular EU, ladies and gentlemen, will only take us take a specific span of time. This is not an absolute model, Mr. Speaker, that you will be abolishing the absolute monetary value of EU, Mr. Speaker, members of this House. The indicator, ladies and gentlemen, that once we will go back to euro, ladies and gentlemen, is that if there's already development in a particular state, especially the states, Mr. Speaker, who are not able to recover because of the monetary value, because they have to compete into international, Mr. Speaker, and members of this House. What is the problem we notice under opening government, ladies and gentlemen? Everyone is affected, Mr. Speaker, once there is an economic depression because the monetary value, because you have to compete with the international, with the other currencies, Mr. Speaker, and members of this House, especially to the investors, ladies and gentlemen, because we think, and more importantly, Mr. Speaker, we think that currency, ladies and gentlemen, is proportionate to the standard of living of these particular individuals, the capacity of the people, Mr. Speaker, to purchase their own products, to patronize their own products, or even the products of the investors, Mr. Speaker, and members of this House. The perfect model, Mr. Speaker, which we would like to adopt here is that the perfectionist policy of China, Mr. Speaker, and members of this House. The long time ago, Mr. Speaker, for how many years, ladies and gentlemen, China controls its yuan, Mr. Speaker, to control its economy as well, Mr. Speaker, and members of this House. Because the yuan, Mr. Speaker, has so low monetary value, the people living in China, Mr. Speaker, is capable of purchasing, ladies and gentlemen, its own products, Mr. Speaker, and members of this House. At the same time, ladies and gentlemen, the industries or other investors, Mr. Speaker, because of there is a huge number of people who purchase their own products, ladies and gentlemen, or the people are capable of purchasing its products, ladies and gentlemen, it's more likely, Mr. Speaker, the investors, because that's the primary indicator of the investments to come in, Mr. Speaker, the ability of the people to purchase the products, Mr. Speaker, especially if that currency, ladies and gentlemen, has low monetary value at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, and members of this House. I'm going to discuss two things in my speech. Number one, I'm going to discuss the dynamics of currency, but more importantly, Mr. Speaker, why do we have to capacitate the people, Mr. Speaker, to use their own money, Mr. Speaker, and members of this House, but more importantly, to liberalize the EU states in terms of having their own economic model, in terms of controlling their currency as of the moment, because it's highly important, because other economic model, especially if you subscribe to the EU, you have to adapt the economic model of the European body, Mr. Speaker. You are forced to adapt that particular conditions. We think, ladies and gentlemen, that's particularly bad. We think you do not liberalize the EU states. Proceed.
Why do you think that the particular policy of EU that you should be able to adapt to the particular economic model is even harmful in the first place when it enables countries to freely trade with one another?
We don't think that we remove the traits of within these countries. What we think, Mr. Speaker, is that the countries, ladies and gentlemen, are enslaved by the system of European Union in terms of adapting the economic model that has been harmful already, especially to countries, ladies and gentlemen, who do not conform in this particular economic model, ladies and gentlemen, members of this House. First, let's discuss the dynamics of currency. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why there is a less investments in a country, Mr. Speaker, who are not able to attract investment, Mr. Speaker, members of this House, is that the people in the particular state is incapable of purchasing its own products or the products of investors, Mr. Speaker, and members of this House. Like for example, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why Greece, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't have any large number of investors, Mr. Speaker, is that this particular people, Mr. Speaker, prefers to save their money at the end of the day. That's the reason why these particular people, these particular citizens, ladies and gentlemen, do not patronize the products, and there's no influx of money or there's no influx of investments in these particular states, Mr. Speaker, and members of this House. We think, ladies and gentlemen, the example of this is the China, Mr. Speaker, where their own people, Mr. Speaker, patronize its own products at the end of the day, and they control that particular monetary value, Mr. Speaker, to maintain the stability of that particular country at the end of the day. Comparatively, Mr. Speaker, if there's an investor who thinks that particular EU has a high value, and people, Mr. Speaker, who are not willing to spend that particular money, ladies and gentlemen, we think there's a less likely for these particular investors to invest, ladies and gentlemen, members of this House, because these people are not willing willing to spend that particular money, Mr. Speaker and members of this House. Lastly, why do you have to capacitate the states to be liberalized the regime and to use their own money, Mr. Speaker and members of this House? We think the member states right now, ladies and gentlemen, are forced to adopt the economic model of the EU body, Mr. Speaker, even it's already harmful at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. We think that it has to be put into their minds, ladies and gentlemen, that we need to liberalize right now the states, especially the affected states, the Greece, the Spain, were indebted to the EU right now, Mr. Speaker and members of this House. Because this was not realized by the EU body, ladies and gentlemen. They always force this particular economic model, even if that particular model, Mr. Speaker, does not fit already with the system and with the pace of these particular states at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker and members of this House. We think that we have to capacitate the people right now to use that particular money to patronize their own goods and their own products, ladies and gentlemen, to patronize their own products, Mr. Speaker, to attack investors, ladies and gentlemen. Because if that particular monetary value, ladies and gentlemen, is very high, we think, ladies and gentlemen, there's a less likely for the investor to come in at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker and members of this House. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, there's already an unstable society, Mr. Speaker and members of this House, who think this particular model is already harmful and doesn't give sense already, Mr. Speaker, members of this House. We think that we have to liberalize the EU states, ladies and gentlemen. We think that we also have to give them the power to control over the currency of their own states.
Mr. Speaker, the problem with the soft clash is that it does not work. Because coming from opening government, they even told us that they're going to get back euro, for example, when there's already a development. What's your standard or indication that a particular country has already developed, Madam Speaker? That's so big, we think we cannot accept that coming from opposition. The clash is very simple. Coming from opposition, we don't want to abolish euro. We think we're going to prove to you why euro is something that unifies eurozone, perhaps, Mr. Speaker, or even for example, let's characterize currency as boils down to a social or a personal aspect of an individual. But before that, a couple of responses coming from them, because this is what they told us about if everyone is affected, for example, Mr. Speaker, that is the problem. Because individuals now cannot, for example, access the money maybe, or they aren't able, for example, to regain, for example, their economic development. You think, Mr. Speaker, this is not highly reliable, or whether or not, for example, there is more likely, for example, for investors to go in. You think, Mr. Speaker, if you have a high currency like euro, investors is more likely to go to you because you're a rich country now. I'm going to delineate that later in my argument on how this is going to work later. But secondly, they told us, like in Greece, for example, people prefer to save money, Mr. Speaker, that they do not even patronize their own products. That kind of that scenario, Mr. Speaker, happens on an isolated case. That only happens, for example, in times of economic crisis. That's why individuals has more incentive, for example, to save money. But even when these individuals, for example, you need also to go to best case scenario, for example, that when these individuals, for example, are at high economic development, these individuals, for example, can also be affected, Mr. Speaker. That's why I'm going to provide the likelihood of you investing does not depend on that. But secondly, they told us about the purchasing power, Mr. Speaker. You think your purchasing power is multifaceted. It does not only depend, for example, if your currency is such low, Mr. Speaker. You think that your purchasing power also reflects to the economic development that you have, or the economic stance of your country that is experiencing. Later, let's try to incorporate different rebuttals in my speech. Firstly, let's try to prove why euro is a unifying measure in whatever time, Mr. Speaker, whether there's a crisis or whether there's progress, Mr. Speaker. We think that we should necessarily characterize currency that is always subjected to changes, Mr. Speaker. And it is also an indication of your financial economy. Why is this so? For example, when our economic progress in the Philippines has come low, meaning, for example, the value of peso in dollar, for example, have increased. These kinds of things that necessarily indicates how your economic progress is even going, Mr. Speaker. To the idea that how necessarily change this. We think, Mr. Speaker, in whatever scenario, in scenario of crisis, for example, or in scenario of progress, we think that there's still a unifying measure of euro. Why is this so? We think, Mr. Speaker, there's a greater incentive of euro for you to help because, Mr. Speaker, there will be the idea of convenience, for example, because I have, for example, as eurozone, for example, as Greece, or for example, as the head of eurozone, I have the money, for example, of euro. That's why even if you have debts, for example, I can automatically give you euro, for example. These kinds of conveniency. We think that countries will always be affected whatever the situation or whatever the crisis is, Mr. Speaker. What's important is how we help individuals or how we help countries, for example, to economically push their advocacies. This is, Mr. Speaker, when countries, for example, have the same currency. Why is this? We think, Mr. Speaker, for example, when foreign investors try to invest, for example, or try to loans, we think that, for example, we need to also weigh things like the foreign exchange of these kinds of things, Mr. Speaker, that necessarily try to delineate you other from other countries. At least when it's Euro, for example, maybe we can also think that it is connected to other European countries that is so rich, Mr. Speaker. We think that we can always invest to that because that currency is something that bridges the gap between between the economic relations of countries, Mr. Speaker. This is very important, especially when in also times of crisis, because this the kind of help that we may take from them is something that's also mutual. But before I go on, sure.
How long the economic system will actually last if it was already a cycle? When a member state fails, a high power state will actually help. How long will it last?
Mr. Speaker, in status quo, it's always happening. On, for example, a country is so experiencing an economic depression, for example. But what the state does, for example, or what a eurozone does, it exhausts all its efforts, for example, to necessarily go to regain its economic development, like what Greece is happening now, and slowly, they're even, they're covering economic development. But second, let's talk about the value of euro as a whole, Mr. Speaker, because let's also characterize currency as a thing that put forward its advocacy as a whole, Mr. Speaker. Like for example, when you have a free trade treaty, Mr. Speaker, you don't have already, for example, to necessarily maybe look at the kind of currency maybe, or for example, if there's a dollar maybe or a 40 pesos, we think, Mr. Speaker, these gaps that necessarily we think are very important coming from opposition. Why is this so, Mr. Speaker? We think that in times of economic crisis, and also in times of economic progress, what we prioritize is, Mr. Speaker, the kind of help that we may give, for example, as World Bank, Mr. Speaker, or the kind of help that we may give as countries in Eurozone, Mr. Speaker. Because it is also the thing that necessarily bonds us all into your social or personal aspect. Why? Because individuals, for example, want to have the purchasing power, have necessarily also that power when this currency, for example, is being helped to by different countries. We think, Mr. Speaker, on how necessarily prioritize this economic aspect, you're going to have to go through. But the most important thing coming from opposition is we'd like to have to question on how necessarily government is willing to give, for example, the kind of help that they're trying to forward, for example, as these nation states, for example, in Eurozone. For every countries in Eurozone, for example, Mr. Speaker, we give them chance. Like Luxembourg, for example, who necessarily a country who can has a difficulty, for example, to forward to regain economic development, but the form of currency, for example, that was given to him as euro, for example, became also his advantage in terms of getting investors because this is from the Eurozone, Madam Speaker. We think so. This is very important. We're very proud to oppose. Thanks.
Thank you, hello. We must understand that there are already member states who cannot anymore survive or sustain already the economic model that was presented in international arena. Because in the past, there was a promise that the moment you actually use this euro as their currency and become the member state, there is a promise of an impressive economic setup or an economic situation that member of Visa. But what happened right now is there are member states who are already struggling in terms of their economy because they cannot anymore sustain the kind of economic model that the Eurozone wanted to forward in this debate. So therefore, the debate calls for another alternative in terms of how to actually save this certain union or this certain group in order to survive for further sinking or drowning, Mrs. Speaker, a member of this House. According to them, they really want to value euro because it plays an important value to all the member states. We concede on that kind of idea. But right now, we need to become strategic in terms of saving the group. Because if we will allow that kind of model, maybe the other countries, like for example Switzerland, will actually adopt the same misery that other countries are experiencing. Because they wanted to tolerate that the moment there are member states who are already undergo depression, they will back up it. That's why my first question is that how that kind of backing up system will actually last? Will it last longer? Because we don't want to tolerate this kind of culture. That the moment there are member states who are already failing, here comes the, like for example Switzerland or Germany actually giving money and actually support in order to help this kind of places, like for example Greece investigator, member of this House. Second is that because of the kind of impressive or very elitist model provided by the Eurozone, it actually lacks attraction coming from other countries or even investors to or even go to the some states. Maybe lucky for Switzerland, for example, because they can survive. But for example, for Greece, who are even lacking resources, it even does not even attract resources because it's hard to become an investor or even someone who actually make a company or corporation to these places because it's hard to actually sustain the economic model that they have. Something that you must understand. Because the policy is that if everyone can actually fit in and survive and sustain the economic model, we will maintain to the euro as their form of currency. But the problem is that they cannot. Not all member states can actually fit in or can sustain the kind of model that they wanted to forward. In my argument, I'm going to talk about two simple issues in this debate. Number one, why we should abolish euro and what's the problem within it. Second is that how do you actually resolve internal problems within the group when you talk about this Eurozone, for example. But before that, yes.
You have told us a while ago that well, these are the countries that can no longer survive or adapt to the economic model of EU. But other than that, you told us that well, EU is already ready there to support them in cases where those things already come up. So what is the issue then?
Exactly the point, Mr. Speaker, because we're talking about the eventuality of the case, because how long it will last, the kind of support, Mr. Speaker, member of this House. Because remember, Mr. Speaker, that every country can be a candidate of economic depression. For example, even US were actually economic progression before, are actually victimized by the economic regression, for example. So meaning, a lot of countries can be candidates. So meaning, we need to become a strategic, Mr. Speaker. We're just abolishing the kind of currency. But a kind of helping mechanism as a union and a group will not be abolished, Mr. Speaker, member of this House. We want individual states to actually survive and sustain the economic model because it's the model that they wanted to adopt and that's the type of model that they can survive to, Mr. Speaker. Let's talk about my first argument on why we should abolish euro. Because in the past, it was the promise to actually when you adopt this kind of currency and you become a member state of this certain group, you actually have an economic or sustainable or impressive economic model or economic setup. But the problem right now, it cannot anymore be forwarded, Mrs. Speaker, member of this House. That's why we want to actually abolish this kind of euro usage of currency because it actually add to the kind of internal problem. Because remember, the moment that your currency is high, the kind of maybe cost of living, or the kind of lifestyle, or the kind of utilization of resources is actually increasing.
That's exactly what we talk about. When we talk about Japan, for example, who have a very low currency, for example, there are a lot of investors coming in the speaker because of the kind of making, the kind of rate which is actually strategic for investor or for investment with the speaker, because there is no currency that they really need to follow because it has very high value or a high standard in this debate. But look at that's why when you look at Japan, for example, it has an impressive economic model because the currency is actually too low, Mr. Speaker, member of this House. Second is that, how do we actually resolve this? We think with the Speaker, we resolve it when you make the member state actually a sustainable state, Mr. Speaker, member of this House. In your problem, you wanted to force this member state to co-opt the kind of economic model, which in fact they cannot anymore sustain this kind of economic model. We wanted a certain breathing point coming from this member state to actually breathe from this kind of very, very stiff economic model, Mr. Speaker, member of this House. By how? Because when you have a low currency, for example, or when you have your own currency, there is a chance of attracting investors, Mr. Speaker. And within this investor, it can actually help your economy. That's why we have different kinds of forum, for example. Exactly why we have APEC, for example. Exactly why we have agreements, for example, because we want to attract a lot of investors. But right now, because of the elitist model provided by the Eurozone, it does not attract any investor or investment, Mr. Speaker, a member of this House, because aside from the fact that it's hard to maintain, it's hard to become sustainable on that kind of model. But because not everyone has the same pattern when you talk about in terms of the resources, in terms of their ability to actually maximize the resources or the economy that they have. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, and member of the House, we also need to, not just about attracting potential investors, but we want other states to actually not to tolerate the kind of culture, Mr. Speaker, that the moment they are already undergoing economic depression, here comes, for example, Switzerland backing them up or giving them money. Because we think, Mr. Speaker, it becomes already a tolerance because the money becomes into waste, Mr. Speaker. You actually does not contribute anything to the group as a group, Mr. Speaker, member of this House. So therefore, if you cannot anymore maintain this kind of elitist model, we think, Madam Speaker, it's time to abolish the kind of usage of this currency, Mr. Speaker, a member of this House. Because let's try to look at the eventuality of the case. Because we think if you have you have all the member states is actually sustainable, that's much better. Rather than when you have a very homogeneous model that everyone looks at you as something economically impressive, which in reality not all member states are actually surviving. With that, we think, Madam Speaker, it is better when you adopt the kind of model. With that, I end my speech.
Mr. Speaker, let's try to respond to their case, ladies and gentlemen. Because they try to see as a problem, for example. For example, their burden, for example, that they want already, for example, remove themselves. First of all, for response, why do you need to remove EU as a whole, ladies and gentlemen? It is that it is the never burden that we so. Because if their problem is, for example, countries being forced, for example, they can go away from EU anyway, ladies and gentlemen, if that's their problem on the first place. But we think that, ladies and gentlemen, it's also unfair for other countries who are necessarily right now enjoying the, for example, the benefits from Europe, for example, when you talk about France. So maybe when you talk about progressive countries in EU at the end of the day. So therefore, we think that their case is only focusing on the worst case scenario of countries at the end of the day. But we also get to talk about this case. When we talk about, for example, purchasing power, it is very important at the end of the day. Then, for example, we need to make people purchase furthermore things because of the kind of currency that they're having. First response, we think that this is purchasing power in their model is relative in nature. Because when you think of it, it will still be, for example, subjective to as to how many people are existing in your country. For example, ladies and gentlemen, and please again, maybe as to how, for example, you have your assets or you have your liabilities as a state, for example, ladies and gentlemen, trying to create these kinds of currencies on the ground. We think that, ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the day, purchasing power will only be selective, or maybe these kinds of benefits will only be selective, ladies and gentlemen, to those countries who have a lot of people, or maybe who have a lot of, for example, money on the first place. Because this is the reason as to why EU exists, ladies and gentlemen, because we realize that there's already some countries who are necessarily disadvantaged on the ground, and that's why EU is there to help them. But we also need to talk about drachma, for example, for Greece. When you think of it, ladies and gentlemen, when you talk about drachma, it's even weaker than euro at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. We think that at the end of the day, when you think of it, their case will never work. But because there will always be the reason of this kind of currency not working on the ground, for example, ladies and gentlemen. But they also tend to talk about that kind of idea that it's just as if, ladies and gentlemen, it's very easy for us to change the kind of currency that we're having right now, ladies and gentlemen. Because when you think of it, currency will always be relative, ladies and gentlemen. And at the end of the day, in my exceptions, we tend to prove why is it very bad when we liberate every country and for them to have their own currencies. But we also tend to talk about, for example, the conditionality of this thing. We think, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very soft flash because it's very conditional and at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. But we also need to talk about, we always live with the assertion that future currency will always be stronger every time, ladies and gentlemen. Without the kind of assertion, that probably these currencies may fail on the ground, ladies and gentlemen. So let's try to discuss with our exception because it's actually trying to characterize first of all how does the currency why currency is very important in EU as a whole. But we think, ladies and gentlemen, we need to also discuss as to how sharing of financial burden is more valuable in our model, and we're even conceding, ladies and gentlemen, that we're having a burden. But finally, ladies and gentlemen, as to why liberating the EU countries is very bad on the ground. Let's try to go to the first exception, ladies and gentlemen, because how does the currency why is currency very important? Because when you talk about currency, ladies and gentlemen, or maybe euro as a whole, it will always be based on the movements of EU, for example. The kind of shifts in the currency, for example, should it increase or should it decrease, will always depend, for example, to the movement of different states. But why is it very important? Because we think that, ladies and gentlemen, this is the reason as to why we banded other countries to have a sustainable life, ladies and gentlemen. This kind of principle is very important for us to help other countries at the end of the day. So therefore, we think that in our model, this is very important because we're able to share it to other EU countries, for example, the kind of wealth that France have at the end of the day. But let's also try to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, this thing as to why liberating the EU countries is bad, ladies and gentlemen. Because when you think of it, they will always have the individual economies. For example, ladies and gentlemen, probably they will have different assets, for example, it will always be subjected to different kinds of things that their country have. But what do you do if you liberate that? For example, ladies and gentlemen, we think that we imply division between EU, for example. We think that, for example, when you realize that there's a different currencies of different countries, ladies and gentlemen, it's even harder for you to invest right now, ladies and gentlemen, because probably the kinds of regulations will be harder because when you try to liberate the kind of economic conditions that because of these kinds of currencies at the end of the day, we think that, ladies and gentlemen, this is very bad. Why, ladies and gentlemen? Because we think that there will always be an unfairness. We try to push forward the narrative of being unfairness at the end of the day because we can always say that, for example, France will always have an higher advantage because inherently they have a good economy. For example, ladies and gentlemen, maybe they have a lot of purchasing power and things like that. But we think as an EU, it's important for you, ladies and gentlemen, to not to leave other countries, ladies and gentlemen. We think that this is where the value of EU goes in, ladies and gentlemen, because when you think of it, the kind of division is very detrimental to everyone. Because, for example, if you're a country, ladies and gentlemen, who do not even have purchasing power, ladies and gentlemen, it's now harder for you to compete from other EU countries at the end of the day because of the kind of currency that you're having right now at the end of the day. But why is it very important, ladies and gentlemen? Because we think that as an EU, you create a blanket rule for everyone, ladies and gentlemen. You don't create a certain kind of unfair advantage one inherent country who has inherited, for example, economically stable. This is why EU is very important in trying to, for example, create inequality. For example, the high value of EU right now shall be shared to every kind of country, regardless of the kind of purchasing power that you have, regardless of the kinds of assets that you have right now. But we think, ladies and gentlemen, and the final, ladies and gentlemen, as to how sharing of financial burden in EU is valuable at the end of the day. Because we think that, ladies and gentlemen, we share the same burden from this as an EU country, ladies and gentlemen. What is the implication? We think that we are able to lessen the burden of this crisis at the end of the day. How? Because first of all, other EU countries can compensate for the losses of some EU countries on the ground. We think that, ladies and gentlemen, in trying to minimize the effects of crisis, ladies and gentlemen, we think that this model is better. Because anyway, ladies and gentlemen, regardless if we have the same currency, ladies and gentlemen, we will still be affected by the risk crisis existing, ladies and gentlemen. But we think that in trying to minimize the kinds of risk, ladies and gentlemen, we think it's better to share the burden. We think that even if we think as an EU, ladies and gentlemen, your goal is to both stand together and, for example, share the burden if you fall at the end of the day. So what did we discuss, ladies and gentlemen? First of all, we try to discuss to you why is EU very important. And when you talk about, for example, we think that our model is better, right? Because in our model, you let these countries suffer alone, ladies and gentlemen, and not subject to the kinds of burdens or not to the kinds of help that this EU have in terms of currency. We think that our model is thank you.
The very main contribution of opening opposition is the idea that, you know what, the liberation of member states from the Eurozone is bad for the member states because it's likely that it is harder for us to find for more investments in order to alleviate the economy. But once you look at the case of closing government later, we're going to prove to you that it is worse under their model. Because under their model, where markets are integrated and considering that there are various gradients of economic situations across member states, what normally happens is that the drafting of a solution is only based on one perspective with no regard to the current economic situations of poorer member states. When you talk about Bolivia and Czechoslovakia, Mr. Speaker, and if their fear is that it is harder to invest, we think that even if we have the Eurozone and even if there is a Euro, the investments only benefit the rich and the elites. When you talk about France and Germany, and this does not even trickle down to smaller member states. This is the very reason why up until now, Czechoslovakia doesn't even have the power and tractors to functionalize its manufacturing industry, Mr. Speaker. At least under government's model, when markets are less integrated, there is more freedom and spaces for these economies to make economic decisions by themselves. There is more freedom for them to draft trade agreements with any other party that they want to trade with, Mr. Speaker and members of this House. What are the contributions of closing government in this debate? Number one, why in principle the Eurozone must be abolished. And number two, why it is better for the member states if there is no euro in the first place. Let us first go to the principle. Why in principle the Eurozone must be abolished. We have to realize why the Eurozone was created in the first place. We think that the Eurozone was established for the purpose of economic integration by means of free trade, by means of provision of bailouts, and other things that seem to protect the best interests of everyone. This is the reason why the European Union made conditional bailouts to Greece, no matter how it hurts to every particular country, right? They did this because they envisioned that the member states would work together and develop together. However, we think that in terms of the vision to owe allegiance to the European Union and integrate their markets, historically, they have given up a substantial portion of their national sovereignty because the decision-making and the privilege of managing their economy is given up to a selected few elite members like Germany, Italy, and France, with less regard on the voice of smaller states like Bolivia and other things. Now, considering that a huge part and parcel of their sovereignty is given up, we think that it is right for us to examine if EU has done its responsibility to deserve that privilege of being entrusted with their sovereignty. Because what have we seen throughout the years that we have the European Union and we have integrated markets through the Euro? Number one, the decision-making calculus of all member states is highly politicized. Like for example, it becomes harder for the European Union to actually impose a corrective mechanism to control excessive spending of Greece, Mr. Speaker. It is harder for them to actually reprimand and actually put sanctions because of certain corrupt charges of their Italian Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker. It becomes harder because the decision-making of the European Union is highly politicized. They don't want to do this because they don't want to hurt the feelings and the feelings and the interests of larger and more powerful member states. Like for example, there is bias development because the trade of labor of certain smaller states is being put with a very excessive and a very unfair trade cap. Like in Bolivia, they invested so much on human capital and they invested so much on agriculture, but a lot of these resources are made exclusive, are given exclusive access with very, very cheap prices to those of other member states that actually use the euro. Mr. Speaker, members of this House, the effect now is the smaller states suffer the consequences, and the richer states actually get more and more elite, Mr. Speaker, and members of this House. We think that the European Union has failed its member states and has only appeased a selected few of its member states, Mr. Speaker. What is the implication of this? Once you force euro even upon all states, upon all member states, you hold all of them hostage to a particular policy, even when certain particular economic policies already hurt them domestically, right? But secondly, the development is selective, as greater member states get richer, while poorer member states get even poorer. By principle, we think that the Eurozone, with its utility of the euro, it failed on its principle that states would develop and prosper together, especially when the policies of EU have become extremely oppressive to those of other member states. So under our model, we allow them the liberty and the freedom to get out of the euro and to actually fend for themselves. Sit down. Second argument, we are going to argue why it is better for member states if there is no euro. We think that the Eurozone has failed to become inclusive to its vision of development. And we think that countries leaving euro is the better way out. Because of economic integration and tight reliance on EU policies, countries are less likely to make decisions that are fit for economic structures. We have to realize that there is a wide disparity amongst member states. You have France and Germany on the higher echelons, you have Bolivia and Prague in the lower echelons. Now, what is the implication? There are gradients of economic policies across varying gradients of countries with different economic scenarios. Like in Greece approach was probably the most viable approach for Greece. Could have been to trade off bonds and other financial instruments to soothe the impact of depression. But EU steps in and says no, maybe because such strategy hurts Italy and France, and that EU's lens is being imposed regardless Greece has an upper hand in terms of resolving these issues. Like in Bolivia, as a developing state for the longest time, they have invested in agriculture, in labor, but a trade impositions that limit Bolivia holds it hostage from trading on its own with China or even making its investments on other particular countries, on other particular international markets. EU imposes a very cheap cap of cost of labor that only lead the giants to get richer while the poorer actually get poorer. What would be the impact if euro is abolished? Individual states can actually apply economic policies that are compatible with their economic model. States can reclaim sovereignty. They can engage in trade, establish trade alliances with a wider international market without having to assess if every particular policy that they would want to propose would either serve the best interest of France and Germany. This is the reason why we are proud to extend. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the problem with Greece is that Greece was very reckless in its economic policies. They spent too much that they are spending something that they cannot earn, ladies and gentlemen. They are spending with so many things, like giving free vacations, paid holidays, and so on and so forth to their citizens, ladies and gentlemen, without any regard that sometime their money will dry up, ladies and gentlemen. Where someone has to be punished for that, ladies and gentlemen, because their economy will crumble, ladies and gentlemen. It's not as if the conditions given by the Eurozone to Greece is something that is very, that is something only to hurt it, ladies and gentlemen. It is something to discipline its fiscal policies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to talk about three things in this debate. First, we are going to extend the idea that it creates a culture of interdependence, but our extension is the mechanics that what is happening on the ground, ladies and gentlemen, where there is shared economies, ladies and gentlemen. You have an expected and assured economy where you can sell or probably buy things within the zone, ladies and gentlemen. Number two, I'm going to talk about why unified currency such as euro, means that you are giving power to member states, even how small they are, in dealing with international issues, ladies and gentlemen, which is very important in the advent of globalization, ladies and gentlemen, which are monopolized by superpower states, ladies and gentlemen. Third is, I'm going to talk about why it encourages fiscal discipline, preventing foreseeable economic collapses such as what happened in Greece. But before that, let me do my remarks. First, they say that we should be like China, devaluing their currency too much in order for it to sell. Ladies and gentlemen, this is too risky. Because in that kind of currency, you are earning probably 25 cents every time you sell. And then in order to earn, you have to sell too much. You have to create too much. You have to destroy your environment too much. You have to mine too much. You have to create cities too much in order to earn. We don't think this kind of economic policy is something that the euro, is something that Europe or something that Greece should adhere to, ladies and gentlemen. Because there are risks. Because what if there are challenges to your market and that people will no longer buy what you produce, ladies and gentlemen? Just like in China right now, wherein there is a very fragile situation because it is being challenged by India. They are forced to spend and spend and spend in order to earn, ladies and gentlemen. And what happens next? If it collapses, ladies and gentlemen, their whole economy will collapse. And I don't think that is a sustainable economic policy, ladies and gentlemen. Sit down. Secondly, they said that we always do backups. Well, you can say it that way, but backups or bailouts are taught thoroughly, ladies and gentlemen, as economic policies. For example, you bail out Greece under conditions for Greece to cure whatever policies that they do that hurts its economy, ladies and gentlemen. Moreover, we say that failure of economic policies is the reason why sometimes economies inside the Eurozone actually fail. And this is curable. And this can be disciplined within the Eurozone, ladies and gentlemen. Now let me go on to the extension of the closing government. We don't think that joining the Eurozone is as easy as filling up paper, ladies and gentlemen. You have to make sure that your market is compatible with the zone, ladies and gentlemen. There are even probation wherein you have to make sure that your market can compete within the member states, ladies and gentlemen. I think 4 to 3 years, ladies and gentlemen, before you can finally become a member, ladies and gentlemen. There is no evidence that the means to membership is reckless, only because their intention is for bigger states to hurt you in the end, ladies and gentlemen. We don't think that's true. Second, is they say that there is no help for smaller economies. We say that no, because there is no incentive for member states to continue to be unfair with smaller economies. In fact, they have incentives to make these economies grow, ladies and gentlemen. The tech transfers agreement signed by the European members to help Czechoslovakia farm even more and compete with China is an evidence in itself to make sure that their member states, even how small they are, should prevail eventually, ladies and gentlemen. The idea that it prevented the recession in Spain and Portugal by making investment in those states, ladies and gentlemen, does not point to an evidence that they don't care. Sit down. First argument, we say that exactly what happened in Greece and Italy. Bailouts were given to the same to save their economies and their governments from being corrupt. Our extension is that we say that they also make sure that conditions are attached in order for these bailouts to not go to waste, ladies and gentlemen. They are assured that there will be trade within the group, ladies and gentlemen. For example, in Greece, their shipping chain are now being modernized by Germany and France, ladies and gentlemen, to make sure that their shipping economy grows, ladies and gentlemen. There is an incentive for them to save that economy, ladies and gentlemen, to invest there, ladies and gentlemen, because their bailout, the money that they lend to these countries will not be taken back, ladies and gentlemen. Even if, ladies and gentlemen, their monetary value is high, ladies and gentlemen, it can still be saved because they have assured markets, ladies and gentlemen. Furthermore, when you speak about interdependence, there are also shared security measures, ladies and gentlemen. Share intel information, ladies and gentlemen. Keeping every member safe, ladies and gentlemen. You don't have to make the same intel agency, ladies and gentlemen, that of Germany and France in order for Malta probably to be protected, ladies and gentlemen, because Germany will do it for them, ladies and gentlemen. We think that that kind of interdependence is important. Secondly, we say that the unified currency gives voice to the smaller member states, ladies and gentlemen. In their smaller states, what happened in the international community right now, which is monopolized by big players, ladies and gentlemen, smaller states are not heard. But if you are a member of Eurozone, ladies and gentlemen, you are heard. Because even if you are only Sweden, who doesn't have a military capacity such as US, you are heard because you are seen as Germany or as France or as Spain, ladies and gentlemen. So you are heard in the discussions in the political spheres internationally, ladies and gentlemen. And we think that this is important. That should not be taken for granted if you abolish the Eurozone, ladies and gentlemen. Thirdly, we see that it encourages fiscal discipline, preventing foreseeable economic collapses. What do I mean by this? Well, we elect politicians, and sometimes the politicians that we elect are so amateur in discussing fiscal policies, ladies and gentlemen. Eurozone is there to protect that government from mismanaging its economies, ladies and gentlemen. We think that these are very important values that should be put paramount, ladies and gentlemen, in talking about the abolition of the Eurozone, ladies and gentlemen. And by that, we probably oppose.
It is true that to some extent, the euro has benefited some states. It's unfair to deny that all the benefits that they were claiming are untrue. But in debates about trying to abolish something, you do not just look at the benefit of one thing individually, but you look at it as a collective, and you try to look at the timeline of how things happened in the euro. Because all the benefits that they were presenting were on the initial parts of the establishment of the euro. But if you look at the subsequent events, in terms of how nations were unable to adapt to the conditions that they were presenting, we don't think that they're still sensitive to the spirit of the motion. Up until OG, we don't think that they were already winning in this debate. Let's talk about two issues in my speech. Firstly, should we retain the euro on the standard of unity, which is, by the way, so vague from opening opposition? And secondly, is the formation of the European Union or the euro really a good standard for us to stay in the first place? Let's talk about the first issue. Should we retain on the value or on the basis of unity? Because coming from opening opposition, they said that there are unifying measures in the status quo. That's why we have to be able to stay. That's why when you try to have the same currency, you push the other to help the other, and all those things. But if you look at it, this is true only in the initial parts of the equation. But if you try to extend the timeline in terms of how things happen after you try to establish the euro, we don't think that the case is still the same. Because if you look at it, all of the benefits, all of the harms that member of government has presented about some states being able to attach conditionalities, but them being unable to adapt to them, such as Bolivia, who are part of the extremes of the euro, is already a proof that you are not able to really follow the conditions in the first place. So maybe it's true that to some extent you wanted to envision yourself about being able to help the other or being able to back everyone up, but in terms of being able to see that your vision was lost and that everything is already the opposite of the picture, we don't think that's already a reasonable way for us to stay in the first place. Later, sit down. But then again, they tell us that it's unfair for us to be able to abolish the euro because you can just leave anytime. And then they complain that the drachma is slow. What's their point? Do you want them to leave because you don't want to abolish the euro and then you're going to complain about the value of the currency? But what's the point? It may be really hard. It may be hard to leave, but it's actually better than staying. Because if you look at it, when you try to retain the euro, there are much more risks and there are much more strings attached to the currency that you have. And we don't think that investments are contingent on your currency because it's contingent on the stability of your currency. And we don't think that's the case when we talk about the euro. And this is why Kelvin argued about having
the lack of corrective mechanisms for Greece's culture of profligacy. So if you look at it, the lack of that corrective mechanism and the inability of the euro to be able to correct the system of Greece, that's why they had to bail them out for a lot of times. We don't think that's still a proof that you have to stay, especially when all of the things in the status quo are already proofs that nothing is working in the status quo. But if you look at it, we don't think it's really fair for us to say that all of the things that they have presented are, untrue in the first place. But let's now talk about the second extension, the second issue. Is the formation of the European Union really a standard for us to be able to stay? Because this is a contribution of closing opposition. They said that there are standards before you enter the European Union, that there are shared security measures, that there are qualifications. You have to screen them for a long period of time. Number one, we don't think that this characterization is true. Because if you look at it, the European Union was established out of desperation to be able to survive after the World War II. Later, sit down. And this is the same thing why they wanted to be able to have that economic integration because they cannot do it for themselves. But then, even if you already had that, stability or reviving in the initial parts, you just try to go down the slippery slope again, and we don't think that same value is there. Later, sit down. But let's recognize the deadlock. You have different versions of how you enter. They said there's a screening, and we said that it's out of desperation. But what is the thing that we have to reconcile? Regardless of which version of entry is true, what is important is the status quo and what is happening right now in terms of how the states are being affected and in terms of how they are experiencing things. Regardless of how stringent or how strong your conditions are or how good your qualifications are, we don't think that it's always about how corrected they are, but it's about the ability of these states to be able to adapt and the ability of these states to be able to follow those conditions in the first place, and we don't think that they were able to prove that. Their burden, therefore, is to prove why, regardless of how strong and how good these conditions are, all states can be able to follow that for a long period of time, even given the fact that Kelvin already argued about the differences and the extreme measures of their culture, and we don't think that they were able to respond to that anyway. Go on.
I don't know if my geography is failing me, but I don't think Bolivia is part of the European Union. Also, this is not a debate about EU. This is a debate about the currency euro.
If you look at it, all of the things that you have presented about the matter on Bolivia and all those states should have been a rebuttal in the first place. But if you look at it, even if these kinds of states aren't part of the EU, but the fact that Greece is an example of you being able to fail in the first place is still a proof that something is wrong. But Bolivia is obviously part of the euro. But if you look at it, in terms of being able to understand how the corrective mechanisms and the several attempts of euro has done, we don't think it has worked. Because all of the things that they are presented are only telling us what the euro is supposed to do. But in terms of how the euro has affected them, we don't think that they were able to back themselves up in the first place. So if you look at it, it's so risky for us to be able to have a lower currency, such as the drachma. We concede to that. But those kinds of risks are always contingent on both sides. We think that there are still risks when you are able to stay in the euro, especially when you have other states in the extreme parts of the spectrum who will definitely pull you down, and sometimes because of your hopes of being able to benefit from it, but you're no longer able to go up. We think that it's an unfair burden for you to be able to impose to all other states, especially when there is already a question on their ability or their sincerity to be able to stay in the first place. Because we think that we wouldn't even have this debate if all the states are perfectly fine with the conditionalities. This debate wouldn't even exist if all the states are perfectly fine in terms of the standards and the corrective mechanisms that you are being able to impose. But because none of the houses were able to prove how effective and how correct these conditions are in terms of being able to have all states comply with it, we don't think that we have to be able to give them the credit, especially when it doesn't even prove that we have to stay, even if all of the things that they presented might be true. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, in assessing whether or not we should abolish EU, we should consider three standards. Number one, EU does not do anything with regards to the problem. We don't think, Mr. Chair, from the very start that EU does not even solve with regard, is even just shy away from a particular problem at the end of the day, wishes isn't even responded coming from the government side. Number two is that no states can survive with certain conditions such as a bailout coming from EU, Mr. Chair, member of this House. In which case, we don't think it is true to begin with. Even since then, EU does not pull out or give some bailout conditions that will certainly harm Greece. Rather than, it gives some conditions that will properly discipline Greece in return back and resurrect its particular economic conditions. Number 3, if the states are going to be better alone in terms of providing or solving these particular problems, Mr. Chair and member of this House, in which case they're able to provide or even contrast as to how member states are going to be surviving, leaving them alone, and if not, if EU is going to be abolished at the end of the day. Even they tried to shy away from the success chronicle coming from the way how EU was able to particularly solve the problem within Portugal and Spain, and I'll further expound that one on my issue. On the first issue set down is that why should we abolish EU? First, to assess the problems that were thrown out coming from government. They told us that coming from OG that we cannot be able to compete with other EU members because that economic model isn't appropriate for them. And even coming from the closing government. That we think, Madam Chair, that it's very faulty assumption because we don't think it will be easy, Madam Chair, to fill in or become a member of EU to begin with. As I told you a while ago, that well, you need to undergo through many conditions to be able to go to that market. But number 2, we think it is false because the moment they join EU, then they have already studied if the particular economic model is even appropriate for them from the very start. They have also conformed to the policies or conditions coming from EU, Madam Chair. With that, we think that there's certain concession that well, we need to opt into the standards of EU and we need to be able to catch up with them. But number 3, even if that is the case, there is a direct concession coming from them that the countries can still, when the countries will be developed at the end of the day, they can go back to the EU. Which also, by the way, concedes to the fact that the countries can also be compatible, Madam Chair and member of this House. Which opens to the fact that, well, there's certain possibilities that the countries can still be compatible with the EU at the end of the day, in which case it doesn't even, we think that their particular problem is not even a problem at all. But number 2, let's talk about other problems that, well, it will be difficult for them to progress if we will be under EU. Number 1, that's a very faulty assumption because EU in itself allows the easy trade among its members, meaning that they're trying to develop from one another. The moment that you have this particular easy trade, when it comes to you have a relationship to your other countries, it allows you to maybe develop more at the end of the day, Madam Chair, leaving you or providing you more opportunities to develop them. But moreover, we don't think, Madam Chair, that for them to be able to trade along within themselves or with their particular country, like for instance, Czechoslovakia or even Sweden, it's very critical then, Madam Chair, for them to be able to trade alone, without even bringing the name of EU in itself. Because Zed even told you from the very start, as EU, that we're trying to debate the monetary currency, not the European Union, is that, well, the moment that you bring the name of EU, well, you think then, Madam Chair, that this are particular country that we should be able to hear of. Because EU in itself are able to gain reputation across the globe. That's why there's a greater possibility for them to be able to access free trade then, regardless on a particular problem. But moreover, number 2, the moment you become a member of EU, it strengthens your reputation across the globe, attracting more investors. That's what I told you earlier. Will strengthen the particular trust that you have established with your investors before that save your case.
You have discussed a lot, like there are already things developing, there are bailouts, there are policies, and we need to value the currency. But none of you really answered the debate on why this kind of economic model could actually stay and remain, knowing that there are economic tensions within the group.
Thank you for opening for my second issue. Well, let's discuss then as to where are we going, where are we better than to solving the problem, Madam Chair, in terms of the approaches. Because what you have already told us, even coming from DTM, from Lulu, that well, we have a support system among EU. But well, by the way, we don't think it's even an issue to begin with, as even pointed out from my PUI, the moment that these particular countries began to crumble at the end of the day. But more than that, Madam Chair, if you're going to leave these particular countries alone, you're going to really suffer from that. Why is that the case? Because unlike Argentina, that they were able to load their currency and they were able to still recover, they were able to get that one from the cooperation of their citizens simply because of their citizens were so disciplined at the end of the day. Looking from the context of Greece, these are individuals who even lack that discipline in the very first place. That if you're going to liberate them, there's no greater assurance that Greece alone can be able to survive this particular problem. If EU cannot be able to discipline them, so what's your particular government then, right? Well then, this particular analysis goes back to the contribution of Zed regarding about fiscal discipline. The moment that you're becoming a member of EU, it assures you to protect them from the mismanagement of their funds. Because we can see that the fact that, well, there are certain differences when it comes to the fiscal policy and the monetary policy no more. But, Madam Chair, but we're not going to create a certain discipline, Madam Chair, that you need to be able to manage your money well so as you not to scramble at the end of the day. But we think the particular intervention coming from EU, even if at risk your sovereignty, is so essential at the end of the day. Why? Because on the very least, you can be able to survive from those particular struggles, from those particular problems at the end of the day, Madam Chair, with a bailout coming from EU. Contrasting on their side, there's no help or assurance that you can be able to be helped by IMF, not even carrying the name of EU. But furthermore, let's talk about the case from CG, that we are going to have the last regard for the voice of other countries. We think it's a very faulty assumption. Because number one, the moment they become members of EU, it enables them to be heard, Madam Chair. Even the Nordic countries from the very start were having this hard time voicing out the concern. The moment they gain or become a member of EU, it already gives them a legitimacy that, well, you should be heard at the end of the day, Madam Chair. But moreover, even at the very least on our side, there's still a possibility that you're going to be heard. There's a possibility that across the globe, you'll still be respected at the end of the day. In contrast to them, it's so difficult for you to say that I'm from Czechoslovakia, I'm from like Sweden, without them even giving you the particular reputation, Madam Chair. We think that EU's particular steps in solving our problem is already enough. At the end of the day, it's risky to give them a bailout. There's already a certain degree, Madam Chair, they're trying to be concerned with other countries. EU is trying to solve this law. For all these reasons, we think that we have suited the standards, and moreover, we think that finally we're going to proceed to the grand finals. Thank you.
Thank you, Joy.